Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We have about a minute. Okay. Make sure. Good evening and welcome to the Federal Way City Council special meeting for purposes of the budget meetings for Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome to the budget meetings. We've got workshops. We've got presentations by the City Council, then the Mayor's Office, then Information Technology, and then our Emergency Management. For the City Council, we'll have the Deputy Mayor. I'll do the presentation for the Mayor's Office. IT will be Thomas Fichtner, and then Emergency Management will be Ray Gross. After that, we will have citizen comment, 3 minutes each, and then council deliberations, and then we'll have an executive session, and I'll provide the details or the specific statute at that time. All right, with that, let's go ahead and move into the City Council presentation by the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you very much. So this is a council budget. Hopefully I can do this. The budget has only increased due to our increase in our dues and salaries. As you can see from the presentation, the council's been really busy this year, and we're going to continue to be really busy. At our retreat, we developed 3 goals, and those goals are increase sustainability revenue streams to fully fund the city budget and programs, enhance economic development activities to maximize opportunities in Federal Way, and develop a plan to reduce homelessness. The first 2 goals are in the FEDRAC committee, currently being worked on, and the last goal has been assigned to the Parks Committee, where we've had several presentations concerning homelessness here in Federal Way and King County. In addition to the many meetings that we have had, council members have attended regional meetings, participated in community events and activities, and have attended workshops and training conferences. One of my beliefs is that the more education we have as a council, the stronger we are as a council. So this is the budget. We'll have an increase of $6,800 in 2019 due to the annual dues increase. In 2020, the annual dues increase will be based on the CPI, which could be around $6,200. One of my items that I wanted to include in this budget was having the City of Federal Way join National League of Cities. And because of the budget concerns here at the city, that we found that that wasn't going to be possible. The cost to join NCL, National NLC, is pretty low compared to our dues for the other associations we belong to. It's based on the 2010 census, and it is about $7,816 to join. However, if we were to join that, I would want us to be able to take part in the travel, training, and education, which is why it would be really important for us to join, and we'd have to travel to do that. And this year their conference is in Los Angeles. Next year it's, I saw it where it was next year, but I think it's in the Midwest somewhere, and we simply don't have the funding to send council members to another conference that would require air travel and hotels. So I'm hoping in the future that we can join this. I think this would be very beneficial to the City of Federal Way to be a member of National League of Cities, but at this time, we're not going to be able to do that. I've also been working with Thomas in IT to upgrade our iPads. And we've had discussions of doing iPads or some other device. We have the funding. However, we don't have the staff time to pull the council, work with the council, because whatever we get, my iPad is 7 years old, and it works most of the time, but it's not very reliable because of its age. But whatever we get, we need to make sure that it's something that the council members want and that the council members can work with. And so we're not just going to pick something without your input, and that's going to take staff time. And I'm hoping that sometime in 2019, Thomas will have the staff that he needs so that we can get new surfaces or new iPads, is what we've been talking about. And when we do that, we would reduce our printing costs, because we're covered with paper up here, and we really need to get into this century and use our technology so that we don't have to have so many paper copies that we dispose of when the meeting's over. And I would like to thank a number of people for their help with council. I'd like to thank the mayor for his support, our department directors, staff, and I'd like to thank especially Jerry Lynn Clark, who's in the back of the room, because without her help and support, we wouldn't look as good as we look, and I think we look pretty good as a council. So thank you, Jerry Lynn, for all you do. Any questions? Yes.
Councilmember Lydia Sepidawson.
Yeah, it's not a question, but I just want to support us joining NLC at whatever time, because a lot of the cities that are a member, when I talk to them, they're just surprised that we're not a part, and they've shared the benefits of being a member city, including all the, not just the information, but there's a lot of stuff that they come back with, information and how to work with other cities, other entities, as well as just the delivery of services that we could benefit from. So I hope this gets revisited at some point, even if it's mid-biennial next year, like 2020. It would be a great idea. So that would be my suggestion.
All right.
When they were in Seattle, I think it was in 2014 for their conference, Gene Burbidge, Kelly Maloney, and myself went and were able to participate, since they allowed cities who were not members of their association but were in the state to go. And we learned a lot. It was a really good conference. So I really, since that date, I've been trying to get us to join. And once again, the membership fees are very, very reasonable. It's just the other fees that come with it that we can't handle at this time.
All right, Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question on the $148,426. Is that just for membership alone, or what included in that figure?
Well, so our budget has supplies. It has a portion of Jerry Lynn's salary, because she works for another department also. It has training, and it has the cost that it takes to go to training, travel, hotel, airplanes, mileage, whatever.
Right, yes, I got that, but my question is just for this figure right here, 148,000, is that the membership that we pay to these 3 agencies, or is it include additional training and all that? I just try to understand what are we paying for?
What is our budget pay for?
It's the page before questions.
That's the slide right there.
Right,
Annual total, bottom line.
right.
What included in 148,000? What do we get from that?
Is that
So-
the sum of AWC, PSRC, and SCA?
Yes.
Okay.
So AWC is Association of Washington Cities, and PSRC is Puget Sound Regional Council and Sound Cities Association. And those are the dues that we owe.
May I say something? I was on the board of the SCA. A lot of these groups that all the cities are a part go down to the legislature and work on behalf of the cities, so that to make sure the legislature doesn't do anything that gets in the way of our doing our business here. And it also sometimes goes down and supports what the voters really want to see too. They're like professional groups that we belong to. As a nonprofit, we belong to several professional groups that shared the same issues and concerns that we had, and we would go out to DC and lobby out there for that. So it's the same thing. It's a lobbying type issue.
I should also note that I'm on the executive board of the Puget Sound Regional Committee as the mayor of Federal Way, and also on the executive board of the Sound Cities Association. So they've got all those different committees, and then we've got, obviously, folks present in the city who are very involved at AWC.
Are you concerned with the costs?
No, I'm not concerned. I'm just trying to understand what is it that we pay for.
Okay.
Is it just a membership or professional fees? What are we paying for?
It's membership and the professional fee, and the professional fees for those people that work with us to help things done, especially legislatively.
AWC has a lobbyist that lobbies for the entire organization. So we get to, they get to lobby for us too. And they will present, they're actually having their regional meetings now. I believe their next one is in Lakewood or University Place. And they will talk about what they're doing, especially down in Olympia this year, if you're interested in going.
The SCA figure is based on population, but once you get to 80,000, you're pegged out. Everybody at 80,000 or above, it's the same. So it's a pro rata share. I would imagine SCA is based on a population, as is PSRC as well. So they base it on population.
Which is what National League of Cities does too.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Tran, any other questions? Okay. Council, any other questions?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Good job, Deputy Mayor. All right, now moving on to the mayor's budget. So, talking about the, let me get Kathy to get that.
Oh. Sorry, forgot about that.
Okay, this is the 2019 and 20 proposed biennial budget, mayor's office section for today's date. So first thing that I want to go is over the, essentially the flow chart. We've got Office Manager Kathy Arndt, who does an amazing job. Kathy, thank you for everything you do every day. We've got Administrative Assistant 1, Pam Jones. She's been in our office now probably about 4 or 5 months now. Yeah, she's just doing a phenomenal job, and we really enjoy Pam. Senior Policy Advisor, Yarden Weidenfeld, and also assisting Yarden Weidenfeld is a part-time intern position that's been held by 2 people now. Right now, Bill Vadino, who is part-time at the King County Council with Pete von Reichbauer, has some hours with us on a weekly basis, and that the collaboration and working together has been very, very helpful. We're working on county issues, local issues, constituents' concerns. So, and so we've got Yarden working on senior policy issues, and you'll see most of these initiatives that we have that's Yarden is integrally involved in. Economic Development Director Tim Johnson, and while Tim had his own budget, and the economic development is essentially part of the mayor's office. He did, as you know, present his own budget presentation, but we consider him part of the mayor's office. Communication coordinator, Tyler Hemstreet, and Tyler is essentially the communication person for the entire city, not really counting the law enforcement police spokesperson, but there's a great deal of work that Tyler's been involved with communications and Facebook and Twitter and dealing with all the media and all the things that we're up to in regard to messaging and relating to the public. Okay. Now, so we've got different or several different major priorities and initiatives coming out of the mayor's office. The first I really wanted to mention is the city lobbying services, and that figure is at $62,000 per year. That's obviously for the entire city. That includes obviously the council's legislative priorities, but also the entire cities, and we work in collaboration with all the local governments. And Aaron Flygair is the lobbyist durant the city of Federal Way. That actually represents a savings. We did have actually Jamie Durkin, who was working with Aaron Flygair, but Jamie essentially is on retirement or has decided to retire, and Aaron's been doing a great job, and we work with Aaron a lot, especially in this off-season. We're starting to work on our legislative agenda for this coming session. Also, it's in the mayor's office, we actually supervise and work with the public defender contract to make sure that the city attorney is obviously not involved in that process. That's $51,000 per year. We've got a good firm that handles our public defender services, and that's a very important and essential, constitutionally required, but also just in regard to making sure that individuals that are accused of crimes get the needed representation. And so I meet with them regularly. In fact, I met with them last Friday, and they needed a quick adjustment to their contract in that there have been new rules that have been passed by the Washington State Supreme Court regarding a limit in regard to the number of hours that public defenders can work to ensure that every accused person gets the required representation. And so I've been working. We've been meeting pretty regularly with the public defenders over the past several months to make sure that we address that and make sure that we've got that working correctly, because everything is dependent on making sure that individuals are treated fairly and have the appropriate representation. Okay, so now initiatives that we're working on, we included in my proposed budget is $50,000 that we wish to have allocated in 2019 for the university initiative. A great deal of work has gone on in regard to the two-phase process for this. I remember it was last January of 2017, in which a memorandum of understanding was signed here at the city with the University of Washington Tacoma, Highline College, and Federal Way Public Schools. Those partners are, it's just been a great partnership. There's a two-track process, as we've talked about. The first is really ensuring that we're working on the items to be taught, or the curriculum, and what's going to be offered. And this really follows a 2+2 model in which you get the undergraduate degree or undergraduate requirements, and that's where Highline is very important in the Federal Way Public Schools, but also in the latter part of offerings, that's where the University of Washington Tacoma is going to be part of that, the latter part of that. This is a really exciting initiative, and let's see, we did actually recall, if you will, that we, in 2016, did a higher education needs assessment that we commissioned and the council approved unanimously, and that showed a clear need for higher educational opportunities in our community. Like I said, we've been working, the second piece of our partnership is working on a location, and while we've been looking at different locations, the goal is to start offering classes in the winter quarter of this year. We initially asked for $800,000 from our state legislature, and we got the return back was $500,000, thanks to the work and support by our state legislative delegation, and especially Representative Policiotti. Our research now shows that we cannot get the project off the ground without $600,000. We need that $100,000 more. That's why my proposed budget will help close that gap to 50, and then we've got our partners who are going to help close the other gap. Initial estimates for staffing is about $185,000 all through Highline College. And so Highline College will be essentially shepherding this. They're going to be the individual that's actually leasing the property there, and we're working very closely with Highline on that project, but with all of our partners. And they've been great partners. It's been, it's very exciting. All right, so the next thing that we're working on is, and this is something I would notice again, or note that Yarden has been very involved, as have I, in the university initiative, but also Yarden actually completed a report with the International Airport Impact Study. So as part of the budget, $35,000 in January of 2019, and in 2020, we'll need another $35,000. A resolution unanimously approved by our city council back in March of this year supported state efforts to analyze the current and ongoing impacts of airport operations on the local communities. A budget proviso signed by the governor allocated $300,000 for that study. It required an equal amount of matching funds from the cities of Burien, Des Moines, Federal Way, Normandy Park, SeaTac, and Tukwila. Now, SeaTac chipped in $150,000 and is the fiscal agent for the process. Federal Way's share, based on our population, is $75,000. That's why SeaTac is going to front the money for the city of Federal Way, and we're going to do the proposal is to do $35,000 again in 2019, and again, $35,000 in 2020. So, and then also on this general issue, we've got the professional consulting on the Sustainable Airport Master Plan, $50,000 in both 2019 and 20. The city's official scoping comments have already been submitted. I sent the council via email those comments moments after we forwarded them, and we also sent a hard copy as well. I made sure that got in the day before. I was kind of teased by people at the office, but I am a stickler for deadlines, and the deadline was the 28th, and I made sure that we got ours in on the 27th. It was postmarked on the 27th, and it was emailed on the 27th. Being a former trial lawyer, I know I can't resist saying that in every meeting.
For 19 years.
For 19 years. But I am a huge stickler for deadlines, and so we made sure that it got done a day before any kind of deadline. Yarden asked me probably about 10 times why this was necessary, but anyway, it's in. And we did, I'm really proud of the submission. I think the submission was very, very thorough, it was exhaustive, but it really went to the points. I think the Federal Way is very well represented. This is really an issue that is going to affect not just a portion of our community, but the entire community and its future regarding livability, and it's something that we are truly engaged in. I'd like to say thank you for the council for your partnership, and I mean, we're really in lockstep on this. I really feel good about it. Okay, and I think also the community has seen that we have really stepped up on this as well. So the city's official scoping comments were submitted, as I said, a day early. We've already authorized $4,000 out of this year's budget to make sure that our comments were well-informed and really laser-beamed on what was important. The draft environmental impact statement and environmental assessment will be released next summer, that's 2019, with final drafts scheduled for winter of 2020. So the timeline will give us a chance to see how we want to proceed in voicing concerns to the airport, to the port, and communicating with residents. Options could include joining with other cities on gathering data, contracting with our own firm. And so those are obviously very important factors as we move forward. And we're exploring options. One of the things that I think was really important is, again, this is happening on multiple levels. And one of those is, we talked about the Puget Sound Regional Council, and as I sit there, they're actually doing a major study as well. And one of the things that was missing in the scoping of that study were two things that I insisted on earlier this year, and that's capacity of the airport. There's only 2,500 acres at that airport, which is, in comparison to other airports around the country, is very, very small. If you can compare that to other jurisdictions. And so essentially, one of the things I've been saying, I said at the PSRC and to all those that will listen, is that there's got to be a capacity. And there's got to be a fill line of which this community has to say no more. And that it does appear that they're essentially building another airport capacity on top of our current airport, which will have tremendous impacts on this next 20 years on this community. Now, the second thing that was not in the scoping study for the PSRC study was impact on area communities. And I wanted to make sure, and I insisted, and finally got the concession from the PSRC, that they did add those two things, impact on area communities and the capacity of the airport. I think that clearly what we need to be talking about is where is the next regional airport? So those are different initiatives that we're working on at the mayor's office. Obviously, we're involved in all the different departments and overseeing all the departments, but these are initiatives out of the mayor's office. Councilmember Duclos.
I just want to give recognition to the cities that came down to the FEDERAC meeting a couple of years ago about the airport and the coalition that was forming, and presented a case to us, which I brought to you.
Right.
Which brought us into that coalition. So I'm glad we're a part of that, and I'm glad they came down and talked with us.
Right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. The intern position that you have, and that Tim had some interns with economic development, who pays for those positions?
The intern positions, he actually, I think he either personally or through, grants.
I believe he has some grants that cover that. I think he got some federal grants, if I understand, and
Right. Yeah. So Tim actually had up to 3 interns at one point. They did not come out of the general fund budget.
And what about,
Bill Vidino's
Bill,
position. So recall, if you will, when Steve McNay left, he was actually, what occurred with Steve McNay's position is, he was at a certain salary position. And so when he left, what I did is I restructured that position, and essentially when we brought in the idea, when when we were finally able to go and advertise and hire the position with Tyler, there was actually a certain line item or amount left over from what that position had been. So there's actually been no addition to the budget. So where Steve McNay's position had been, we calved off, and because I thought it was important to make sure that we had that we wanted to make sure that we had an internship program that we started that December, last December, and so essentially he gets paid about $18 an hour, 4 days a week.
so I'm looking at the list of positions in your office, and I don't see any intern positions. So does this position not carry through to 19 and 20? The intern position?
Aday, were you listening to that question? Okay. Would you please ask the question again? She's asking about the intern position with Bill Vidino.
I don't see it in the list of department positions for the mayor's office. I don't see any interns listed.
The presentation, the mayor's office budget actually, for the administration, if you look in the budget book,
Yeah.
that is just on page C8. And the major item in there is pretty much the salary and benefit. Then, as the mayor pointed out, in one of those slides, you have the public defender and the lobbying. All the other items are in the non-departmental allocation.
So where does Bill Vidino's salary, while he's assigned to the mayor's office, where's his for 2019? Where is his salary accounted for in the budget?
The salaries, the total salary is $451,000, and the benefit is $185,000. Again, that is on page C8.
Right, for the entire department.
Is what?
For the entire department.
Yeah, correct. For just the administrative portion of the mayor's office. I think part of what we often consider as mayor's budget includes economic development, which Tim made a presentation last week. Also clerk, which the city clerk made a presentation on that last week. Also is HR, which of course, the HR manager made a presentation. What the mayor is presenting today is just the administrative portion of the mayor's budget. And in that, as he pointed out, you only have the mayor, Kathy, the assistant, Tyler, and Yadin that are accounted for on that.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I'll-
Any other
I'll
questions?
Discuss it further.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the hopefully anticipated key projects is the homelessness initiative, and depending on the recommendations from the task force, do you foresee that being included in your budget, or is there any room for that?
Well, I think that, certainly they're going to be coming out toward the end of the year. I think this would be probably more appropriate for like a state legislative request as opposed to the city budget. I don't think it's important. I don't think it's prudent to come up with an arbitrary number. And, I don't know exactly where, nor will I presume where the committee will come out on these issues. But we don't want to just throw an arbitrary number against the wall again, or be part of the operating budget. So, part of this could be legislative ask, we could maybe even ask for county funds or state funds and see where we're at. We did receive $100,000 last year for funding for homeless mothers and children, and those we're still working our way toward allocation of that. And I would say that I think that we had, as I said in my state, or in the budget presentation, we do have general fund monies, about $180,000 per year that we spend on homeless services. Okay. Council, any other questions? Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question on the page A3 of the budget book. A3. Under the mayor's office, the 2017 actual and 2018 projected FTE, it was listed at 27.34. And then on the proposed budget, it's reduced to 20.34, so 7 FTE less. Is this came from the PAC?
Aday?
Yes, it does. And I think because in 2019, or actually in 2018, the administration of Performing Arts Center has been assigned to a management company. So when we were managing Performing Arts Center, we had about 8 or 7 employees that report to the city. But now with the management company, they are no longer city employees. That is what created the reduction in that number.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm just kind of curious, and maybe I can get a day to kind of help me look for this. I know you do a lot of great work in your department, obviously. And I know that you have these amazing op-eds, so to speak, and I'm assuming they're paid advertisements or paid aspects. Where
Some
on
are,
C6?
some are, and some aren't. It's been a real mix.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, some are and some are not.
Right.
Got it. So I'm just wondering on C6, if I'm reading this, where would that fall in? I'm just kind of curious where that total is and what that looks like. And am I looking the right page today or
What
not?
page are you referring to?
Of the budget book,
Yeah, what page? C8?
C6. Or is it C8? I don't know which.
C8, C as in cat, and 8.
Yes, C as in
okay.
cat.
C8, what you have in there is just the administrative portion of the mayor's office. At the C9, which again, that will be economic development part of the mayor's budget, which, as I pointed out earlier, Mr. Johnson made a presentation on that last week. If you turn to the next page, also you see more about the economic development and, of course, emergency management. So those have been presented individually. What the mayor just spoke to is just the administrative portion. Otherwise, if he present all of these, we will be going over them twice. There will be a separate presentation in a few minutes about emergency management, which of course, rolled into the total mayor's office, but it's different from the mayor's administrative section.
And thank you for that answer, Ade. Maybe to be a little bit more specific on C6, where would the, I don't know what you call it, media?
Advertisements.
Advertisements? I don't know what the technical word
Media
is.
outreach.
Media outreach, okay. Maybe specifically to advertisements, where, is that miscellaneous costs? I mean, what is that on C6?
If you're looking for advertising, which for 2018, that was mostly in Performing Arts Center. So the mayor's office per se, then of course you have, when we publicize the council meetings, which of course will be in the clerk's office. But the mayor per se itself doesn't really, unless I'm not fully understanding what you're.
So
Well, we
the
didn't,
mayor's,
if I could, we didn't, there's not a particular line item. I'm not asking in our budget for 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever that amount is, that's on an as-needed basis. If something gets either put out in the community, or there's a new initiative like launching of the budget, or if we've got something major in the community, that it's important that I communicate with the public. So
absolutely.
it's an as-needed situation.
Right, and certainly, I've enjoyed reading all of them, and I think they're very, very thoughtful. But like I said, that looks like a paid advertisement, which is completely fine.
On occasion.
Okay, and so I just wondered where in the budget does that come out? Because I wanted to get a
So
more zoomed in look
so
at that.
Ade, when we do these, where is it accounted for in the budget?
So when we do the mass mailing,
No, the mayor's memos.
Mayor's
the
memo, yeah.
the mayor's memo, that will be on the, we pay for that pretty much under the supplies. Because we printed that out and we mailed it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Because it's paper supply for the printed copy.
Of that appear in the Federal Mirror?
The Federal Way Mirror will be on the services. If we pay to
Right.
Federal Way Mirror, that will be on the services, which is part of, again, if you're looking at C8, it will be a portion of that 481,000. I cannot tell you exactly how much that amount is, but it will be a portion, a small portion of 481,000. Out of that 481,000, just so that,
It's nowhere near 481,000. It's a. that's-
No,
Right.
no. 409 out of that 481 is actually public defender. And out of that 481, we also have 62 that is paid for the lobbying. So it will be about 10,000.
Within services and charges?
Yes.
Okay,
Under services and charges.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, now, IT, Thomas Fichtner.
Perfect. Well, good evening, Mayor Ferrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, and council members. I'm Thomas Fichtner, the IT manager here for the City of Federal Way. I'm here to present my 1920 proposed biennial budget to you. And first off, a quick picture to show the team as of September 14th. We had a few more members there. One unfortunately left our department, the other one was an intern. But as you can see, probably play Where's Waldo here. You can kind of match some faces. So we've got on the far left, Stacey Curry, Brian Pearson, and Jason Daniele. You can see how they fit into an organizational chart. We've got an IT supervisor, architect for web applications and security, an analyst for GIS, as well as a technician. And also the vacancy, like I had mentioned before, is on the systems side, systems and networking. And we also have a technician too, which is primarily help desk support. So 7 total FTE. We're not just City of Federal Way. We are regional representation, and we do have other partners, Valley Communications, SCORE, C3, which is the fiber consortium that's part of a lot of member cities in the area, Safe City, which is our camera program here in Federal Way, as well as ACES, which is the Association of Counties, Cities Information Systems. So it's basically my colleagues in the entire state of Washington. It's a regional sharing of information consortium. So of our 17-18 accomplishments, this is a short list, a few slides, but it's nowhere near comprehensive. Number one out of the chute is we completed the Washington State Patrol CJIS triennial audit. A lot of words, including an acronym, but it's important that we pass that. That is CJIS stands for Criminal Justice Information Systems. Without passing this audit means that we would not be certified to retrieve any criminal history, background checks, and effectively our police department could not do their job without that. So it is important that we pass this and make sure that we follow their guidelines, make sure we keep track and keep care of their data, so that way we can still continue to retrieve it. Annual replacement of major hardware. There's a few of these things on here that we still have yet to do that are slated to be completed this year. JustWare is a case management system for court. We've definitely made some improvements to that. It's kind of an ever-evolving program. One of our major accomplishments that has actually taken 6 years to complete, and it's probably weeks from actual completion, is our upgrade of the ArcGIS system. So everything to do with maps in Federal Way, whether it be online or whether it be for permitting, public works, is generated through our GIS system. And it may not seem like a lot for you, 9.3 to 10.6.1, not a big deal, but it's huge. It's a complete change of how that GIS system is made. So it's taken a lot of staff time, a lot of thinking and re-architecting how we have this GIS system set up. So it's a huge win, including a new GIS portal. The portal allows not only staff, but the public to have greater access to our GIS data. So as we build those layers, as we continue putting information in, which I have an example for you here shortly, you can easily access it at your fingertips, right from the public. Of course, we've enhanced our Wi-Fi system here and there at city facilities, Federal Way Wireless. And we set up all the IT infrastructure for the PAC, from fiber optic from this building to the PAC, from all the computers, laptops, wireless cameras, and copiers and printers. That's all us. That's all our department. And you might have also noticed that we sent out, or we created a new e-newsletter service through Constant Contact. It's a lot better branding, a lot better messaging, and it allows our staff to have a lot better insight into who's actually opening those mails, who's reading them, and what our click-through rates versus just deleting them. So huge improvement for us as far as communicating with the public. Digital display boards, you may not have seen them at Community Center, Dumas Bay, and the Municipal Court. It allows easy, real-time ability to display information, and we've got a lot of positive comments from the public. RecTrack is currently in place, or not in place, in progress, and that is replacing the entire class system, which is how the Community Center operates and Dumas Bay operates their business to a new system. The previous one is old, as Parks Director Hutton indicated in his presentation last week. We also implemented Mimecast, spam and email, which I'm sure you guys are aware. You're getting those new emails now. It is a learning curve. We're moving forward with it, but it is a far better product for spam and email archiving for the city. And as you might not have known, while the other directors were up here last week doing their presentations, I was in the back working on broadcasting this program, as well as working on the laying the steps for that, and stayed up to about 3 in the morning after that, getting everything ready for the following day when we actually cut over. So it's things like that that just go unnoticed, but the work has to be done. And this IVR is very important because it is the last Windows 2000 server that we had in operation. So Windows 2000 came out in 2000, and so fast forward to 2018. It was still in operation on life support, but it's a much better product, and IVR is how all the developers call in their inspection requests for inspections. Community Center AV upgrade, that will be completed this year. In 2007, when the Community Center opened, we didn't have any audio-video projectors or microphone systems for our 3 community rooms, and that we're finally remedying this year. We're going to get that system all set up, and it'll be a very nice system. We also dedicated one of our FTEs out of GIS for the community development's lien process. And that was a huge win. And Councilmember Moore, you mentioned how excited you were about the lien process, and that's important. Like I said, it's a big win for the city. And out of that, a series of recommendations about that process came out, one of which was electronic plan review, which is a huge step forward for us. And that is for the Bluebeam system. But while it's cool to just say, yeah, we're going to implement this software, it actually has 3 components to it. Monitors, larger ones. You saw Director Davis bring in a roll last week of plans, a complete plan set. You have to be able to review that. And on a monitor like that, or even what Stephanie is looking at, isn't big enough. You need to have something larger. So we have to do the work with staff, measure workspaces. We have to make sure that we get the right product for the purpose. And so monitors, getting purchased and installed. Software, we have to get the Bluebeam software, install it on the servers, get it set up, and then when it gets updated, which it does, we have to install the updates. And then finally, transferring those big plan sets back and forth. It's not going to happen over email. So there needs to be a special file system for that. So those, like I said, it's a huge win for the city, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of behind-the-scenes things that might not be seen. And finally, GIS fiber mapping. For Public Works, they're doing the adaptive traffic signal system. And that's been council approved. It's a huge win for the city. But the consultant needed some information, and we didn't have it. We don't have, we know where fiber optic goes in the city, but it's along the streets. We don't know when and where. So we actually took that GIS system and we created a map. And as you can see, this is a subset of the section. It is representative of the phase 1 and 2 of the adaptive project. And each one of these boxes, as I zoom in, is a data point. And each line is another data point. And we're collecting data for all of our assets. So much so that you can click on this and find out that that's a vault. Its object ID or access point ID is AP56. And we even go out and get photos. So we know what's in the ground, and you can see that we're labeling things with City of Federal Way tags, so we know what's there. We're labeling the vaults. It's a lot of work. It takes 4 IT staff to go out and deal with this. You're having people put stuff in an iPad and also tug back and forth, verifying cables. So it took 3 months, 4 IT staff, and you'd subtract my total staff of 7 from 4, and you can do the math. If somebody's on vacation or sick, the project has to get postponed. And Safe City Upgrade. We got a $250,000 grant from Washington State for upgrading all of our cameras. Another huge win for the city. Big steps forward, but it's a lot of work. And unfortunately, the guy that was in charge of that project is now working for City of Auburn. So we're still trying to put together a plan of how to move forward and get that completed. And last but not least is equipment surplus. This is one of those things that just happens. We have a room downstairs. It's our server room that's about 1,660 square feet. That's an average home size in Federal Way. And over the last 3 years, it kind of gets full of all the equipment. And that's the current status last night. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of work in inventorying assets, cataloging them, calling up the vendor, getting them moved out. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Ryan has been heading that project up, and it's a lot of work to go into there. So one of those things that we have to do, it gets unnoticed. So moving forward, our budget highlights and changes for 19 and 20. I'm not going to read through the entire thing. The one note is the salary and wage reduction of $108,000 was based on a 1.5 FTE that we were allocated but never hired, and that was due to the funding mechanism, the Transportation Benefit District. It's not like we didn't want the help, we did, but there was no funding, so we couldn't hire it. So I just want to make sure that was clear. The funded new programs in 19 and 20 largely are capital. It's replacement of equipment, desktops, laptops, police, and so on, as you can see there. One important thing to note is $20,000 for the security audit in 19, and we'll get to why that's important here coming up. But unfunded needs. There are a lot of needs that every department, as you've seen last week as well, that didn't make it to the budget, but are still a need. And of that is staffing. And this is the last thing I've been looking, or the same set of staff, 4 FTE and or temporary help, that I've been looking to add for the last 2 bienniums. And it's sheerly because of the workload. It's not like I want to manage more people. It's the fact that we need this to stay and to keep up. And here's a couple of interesting tidbits. Historically, Federal Way IT, if you're dating back to 2002, had 9 FTE. And you can see the rise and fall of the economy, but we never really have recovered. And so where we had 9 in 2002, we now have 7 in 2018. But I can assure you that we have added a substantial amount of systems that we support in that time. Looking at our neighbors, we have showing the red columns and the red graph, or the red text on the left side of the page, is the city FTE. The blue line and the blue text on the right side is the IT FTE. And you can see where Federal Way is. But that's not an easy comparison because different cities, they have different services that they provide. So that doesn't really make sense. But what does make sense is when you look at that ratio. And you can see where Federal Way is. And so when you divide each IT person, one IT FTE is supporting, in Federal Way's case, 49.8 city FTE versus Bellevue that's at 22.4. So additional unfunded needs, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but these are things, PD unbudgeted applications and contract services increases, those are things we're doing now. We have the services now, we have to pay for them, we just figure out a way to make it work, whether it's through our budget or PD's budget, but we're using it. Same thing with 800 megahertz radio service. Every time we add a radio for an officer, they have one in the car and one on their person, and King County controls that program. And so we pay, and their rates go up. We have to pay it. Cellular service, when John was talking about adding cell phones, smartphones for their park staff, we can see it here. Data goes up, amount of cellular phones go up. One example is like even a fiber tester would be helpful to have because right now, if something happens, and you can see from that map, we have a lot of fiber already that's mapped, and there's a lot that's not mapped. But if something breaks, we have to call a vendor because we don't have the tools to test it. So something like that would be an easy win for us to save money in the long run. And then off-site disaster recovery. That was one thing when we went to Emmitsburg last year for the FEMA training. That was the one thing about IT that came out of it, was that our lack of redundancy in disaster recovery was a risk. And so this was in the previous biennium, and it's there again. It's something of the nature where we can have a setup, a system at another location, whether it be a city location or a data center that we're connected to over fiber, that we can have our data replicated in real time. So if something happens, it's somewhere else, and it's protected. And obviously, website maintenance there, we've discovered that websites are not something that in this day and age, 2018, and moving forward, if it stays stale, it's not good. It doesn't make sense. People want real-time, interactive, constantly changing content. And this is how we would need to keep it update. We have a little bit of cash in our budget for website maintenance, but not what's needed. So 2019-2020 anticipated project, citywide security assessment. Again, I'm teasing you moving forward, but we're going to get to why that's very important. It's a big thing, and I'll explain to you in a little bit. Storage system, data is constantly growing. We need to keep up with it. Our SAN, which is our storage area network, where everything is stored, it's old and slow, and so we just need to replace it. With that comes backup. We're still backing up to tape, unfortunately, but this software will kind of get us in the right direction if we can find a way to do a different strategy in the future. And of course, upgrade server software and a citywide upgrade of Windows and Office. We have to do that next year. Windows 7 and Office 2010 is not going to be supported by Microsoft anymore. So we have to move forward. In order to get those security updates, we have to keep the city safe. So key challenges. Staffing and staff retention. As I've indicated previously, we did lose a gentleman this year to the City of Auburn. That was tough. It was a big. He's only been with us for 2 years, but with that, it took a lot of training and a lot of expertise, and to get him where he's at, and that's kind of playing into the bullet point number 2 is institutional knowledge risk. When somebody like that leaves, they're taking something with them. As a matter of fact, you remember that org chart I showed you. There's not like a larger organization where you have silos of specialties. We're so thin that every single one of us are doing jobs of 2 or 3 people. And so when that one person leaves, it's really 2 or 3 people that's leaving with them, packed into one. There's no depth, there's no next man up. So that is a huge risk for us. Not to mention, we're competing with our private sector and neighboring agencies. We're so close to Seattle and Bellevue, every position on that org chart translates directly to a private sector job in information technology. And our private sector people have deep pockets. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Tableau, they're all in Seattle or Bellevue or Redmond. They're close. So that's a risk. So being this small, we're reactionary. We're firefighting. We get in it every day, and it's an 18-burner stove going, and they're all on high, and then we just, whatever one boils over the first, that's what we react to. We're not very proactive, and like Aday had mentioned in his presentation, that Federal Way family, that kind of fiber that binds staff together, where if you need extra, they'll give it, that only lasts for so long. So behind the scenes stuff, even Earl, our GIS analyst, is behind the glass tonight working on broadcasting this meeting. And so GIS, it's not in his job description, and he didn't go to school for it. But we're IT people doing broadcasting jobs. So, and you're probably wondering, why is interdepartmental support on here? That's what we live and breathe, and we appreciate it. And I don't mean to it's not a bad thing about the directors, but it's something that I need to make sure that when Jean Stanley was up here for HR, she mentioned about the paper costs increasing. Well, that also, if people are printing more, that copier and printer maintenance goes up. I see that in my budget. City clerk is referring to public records requests. How many of those public records requests get submitted that have an email component to it? A large percentage. That Brian Pearson takes care of. We pull the records to have them reviewed. Parks, when John was talking about smartphones, I indicated to earlier, that has an impact to my budget. GIS, they want to put assets into our GIS system, which is great, but you're talking about Stacy and Eric that are doing that work. Public Works with the fiber mapping, like I said, that took 4 people. So it's a huge burden. Bluebeam, and even PD, we've got Safe City cameras. We're up to over 176 cameras in the city of Federal Way, including building surveillance as well as out in the public. And that, they don't maintain themselves. The state grant was an awesome win for the city, and it gets us kind of refreshed, but they still don't maintain themselves. So we're getting to the last few slides here. This is an email, and there's an example. It's an email I get every Friday. It's called 5 for Friday. There's 5 headlines in technology. And this was recent, September 21st, 2018. Headline, XBash malware packs double punch, destroys data and mines for crypto coins. That's perfect. They're deleting your data and they're stealing your power while they're mining for crypto coins. Okay? Your business should be more afraid of phishing than malware. And for those of you that are not aware of phishing, the definition is simply this. It's a noun. The fraudulent practice of sending emails purporting to be from reliable companies in order to induce individuals to reveal personal information such as passwords and credit card numbers. Another headline, ransomware will be top threat for years. GovPayNow.com leaks 14 plus million records. It's a popular government payment website. We don't use it, so no need to worry there. But that happened. And healthcare lags other industries in phishing attack resiliency rate. That's reassuring to know with all your medical records. So, key challenge, security is a big one for us. You might recall from earlier this year, March 2018, Atlanta attack may cost another $9.5 million to fix. They were taken by a crypto ransomware piece of malware. It infected their computer, it locked them out, and demanded a ransom of about $50,000 worth of Bitcoin. They didn't pay it. Instead, they paid about $2.6 million to have vendors come in and help them recover. Their systems were offline for roughly 7 to 14 days, and then they trickled back online. And I believe they spent the next 3 months kind of still moving forward. And they're spending another $9.5 million to put in new systems and new processes to prevent this from happening in the future. September 2018, just last week, Port of San Diego is a victim to a cyber attack. And just a little close to home, August of last year, Yarrow Point phishing scam. Now this one, I was at a conference a little while ago, and I got the following stuff from the Seattle Times. So it's all public records. I didn't do anything bad. It's out there. And in fact, the Yarrow Point official that was at this conference is happy to talk to anybody that will listen about this. But there was some email traffic that went through from a Mayor Richard Cahill, which is in fact the mayor of Yarrow Point, to John Joplin, who was the controller at the time. Good morning, John. Are you in the office today? John responds, I'm working from home today as my driver wanted to stay home for the eclipse. I will be in tomorrow. I'll be sending you soon my recommendation for budgeting 2018 REIT. Richard Cahill, the mayor, says, okay, I'll be waiting to read from you with the budget. John, I need you to handle a wire transfer for me today. Can I send you the wire details now? John responds, yes. So Richard responds, and sure enough, here it is. Process an outgoing wire transfer, $14,624 to the account details below. I will send you the invoice and all supporting documents later. Send me an email with the wire confirmation when done. And so John's like the studious financial guy he is. He says, hey, there's a difference here between the $14,000 and then in the banking routing information, the $34,624. I don't have the final email, but the mayor responds as the higher one. So it's important. I share this because I've been hinting at the security thing, the $20,000 that we budgeted for next year for a security audit. It's safe. You know what you don't know. Okay? Stuff that you know. But what you don't know, that you don't know, that's the stuff that's scary. So we need to have somebody come in and actually look at all of our systems and really figure this out. But this is how easy it is. This is how staff training is important. And if you notice, in the lower email, John responded to Richard Cahill at CEO124@outlook.com. And obviously his little English, and the punctuation was a little off. And in fact, he didn't use his nickname like he normally does in typical correspondence. So all these are red flags. But how easy this happened to somewhere so close and small like us. So it's not a matter of if, it's when. And this is my number one challenge. And this is what keeps me up at night. So with that, any questions?
Council, any questions? Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Thomas, for the in-depth presentation. I'm not an IT person, so some of the language was a little hard to read, but I really appreciate how you kind of laid out what you're doing, what your department does, because I think I agree. And I said this about HR last week, but I think both departments are kind of like oxygen, vital to our city, but you don't see it. And so one thing I wanted to ask, and you kind of talked about how you're trying to make sure that the city is streamlining our operations, automate our city. And so for the 4 positions, you know, which one of those do you think is the most vital if you had to choose right now? And I also wanted to ask kind of your experience with the zero-based budgeting process for this and how that worked in trying to determine your budget.
So to answer your first question, I was hoping this one wouldn't come up because they're all necessary, right? But I've had a lot of time to think about this because in the event that I did have it, and we technically did have it in the budget. So if the TBD had come to fruition and we would have gotten that funding, we would have hired somebody. And at this point, my number one is it would be the application analyst. It's where we have the most risk right now. We have one person that's responsible for a variety of systems. And honestly, that skill set is in high demand right now by our private sector friends. And so, like, for example, the Justware system in court is managed by one person. And in addition, like for Brian Davis's department, for CD, to have another person to look at and really grab a hold of the automation and the business processes with the Amanda system, which is our permitting system, we wouldn't have to go out to our vendor as much for support. It seems to me like every time we ask them for a quote, it's $10,000 to $30,000 to do something to our system. So it's not cheap at all. So in that order, and then in help desk, we're deficient. We have one person dedicated to help desk. That's Xiao. He's also working on some systems stuff as well, and that we have ongoing on our help desk. If you look at it, on average, 60 open help desk calls at any given time. But remember what I told you about that anecdote with the 18-burner stove. That's what we're faced with. You know, we got 60 presenting us every single day, and we've got the phone ringing, and we got emails coming in. So it would be that, and then also admins would be really helpful as well because it's kind of a force multiplier, as Ryan Call has referred to an admin as. It's, you know, we do all of our purchasing, we do all of our invoicing, so every single one of us gets pulled off for that. So kind of long answer to your question. But as far as zero-based budgeting, you know, with the mayor directing us, he took the big 4 kind of as a target for that. And so for us, you know, thankfully, we didn't have to make up any of the budget. So basically, we took our baseline budget and brought that into 2019 and 2020. So we didn't have any cuts, and so I want to thank Mayor Ferrell for that as well.
Well, clearly, that with the smaller departments, there's just no, there would be an unnecessary or academic exercise that you know, really would not be necessary. What I would say, though, is again, this is a 2-year biennium. So what we have not done is committed, once we have that additional $2 million from the SCORE money, we have not committed to where we're going to add those positions until after we do a comprehensive workload study. But one of the things we're going to do as we get closer to 20 is get that workload study complete and figure out where, you know, which departments need that. Instead of doing this in patchwork, I think it's much more important to be very thoughtful about where in the, where in the city we're going to be adding those positions. But also, at the same time, we'll need to have the information about the workload, the salary study. So assume we get, and the idea is we get $2 million starting in 2020. We want to make sure that we can expand the current salary base with that money and also add very strategically in certain departments. I would imagine that my recommendation that I'll bring forward to you probably in a mid-biennial budget amendment will be additions to staff and salary adjustments, but those we're not ready for that yet. So I want to say this is the presentation right now really addresses the austerity measures for 2019, not for the full biennium, if that makes sense. Help is on the way. We got with the $2 million we have from SCORE, and should we prevail in the litigation, another $1 million. There should be $3 million heading our way starting very soon. But we cannot count on that money with regard to that water and sewer litigation that we're in right now. But should we prevail on that, we believe we will, that'll be another $1 million. Councilmember Kopang? Oh, sorry. Councilmember Asafa Dawson.
Thank you. I have two questions for you. One is, when you talked about the fiber, and if there's any issues, we contract out.
Yes.
So how much is that, and would it be cost saving if we actually, or are you even considering to
So-
hire someone to do that in-house?
So that particular slide that you're referring to is the fiber tester. And well, we don't have a skill set to actually splice fiber. It's fairly straightforward, but we don't have the skills or the training nor the manpower to do that. But what we do have is the ability to, if there's a break or something of that nature, some sort of anomaly that happens, this would be equipment only. And to be able to go out, hook into the fiber and say, well, yep, it's broken. Or, yep, I can't see it at the other end. So it's something right now, we don't have those tools to be able to do that like the pros would. This would give us at least the professional tools to be able to do that. And so we wouldn't have to call somebody at $1,000 a pop or $1,500 or $2,000 a pop. It just depends.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, last week, when we had the budget meeting, Councilmember Kopang and I were on the phone.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to watch it on YouTube and also listen to the conversation, and there's a long lag time. So is that something that could be corrected with a budget? What can we do so they line up?
So I'll try and keep the answer short and non-technical. One thing I had in my notes, but I glossed over, was that we are going to be supposed to upgrade this room this year. But due to, similar to Deputy Mayor Honda pointed out with your iPads, we've had to bump things. This room is one of those things. So every equipment in the back room is literally on life support right now. So we are broadcasting in standard definition, which for government access, honestly, isn't that big of a deal to go to high definition, but it is where everything else is. To change the screen out to a 16 by 9 style widescreen display and all these things so it matches here instead of having the black bars. That's one thing. So we are doing that. My plan is to hire a consultant to come in because this is beyond our expertise to figure out exactly what equipment we need, including the YouTube broadcasting. And then have that all ready to go, and so we can go out for bid first part of next year and get this thing done. Because literally every week that I have a council meeting, I get a little nervous because there have been times where I think you guys have recalled we hadn't had audio, so I had to go and rob a mixer from the courtroom, bring it up here while you guys are having your meeting, so that we could get the speakers working. So it's that kind of stuff that we have to do. So literally, it is on life support. Now, we're going to look at a whole comprehensive streaming solution as well. So we broadcast on Channel 21 as well as stream to YouTube. Whether or not that broadcast delay will be addressed, we will find out. But the consultant would be the perfect person to figure out, hey, this is a problem. But yeah, no, it's like 45 seconds. So it's not, when you're on the phone. But I will say, the phone is a huge, thanks to Brian and his hard work on the phone upgrade, that system is way better than having the speaker phones up on the dais. That was brutal. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And so you have, for the consultant, the budget is in here somewhere?
It's not in this particular budget. It's actually in a Special Studies 107 account. It's funded based on Comcast franchise fees, so that's how we get that money. And it's restricted funds, so it can't be spent on staff or any operations. It's specifically on capital for public government educational access, and that's what this is.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda, and then Councilmember Kopang.
Thank you. We've listened to all the departments except one now talk about their needs and concerns for the upcoming 2 years. And in my opinion, your department is the most critical to the running of the city, because the courts wouldn't be able to operate, the police wouldn't be able to operate. We just wouldn't be able to operate if your department had an issue. And it's frightening to think that the issue could come because we can't afford the the amount of staffing that you need. Saying that, is it possible to get interns from one of the multiple schools around this area, universities that offer this kind of student that would be interested in getting some real-life experience?
So that's a good question and and thank you. I don't want to toot my own horn because we're very similar to HR and finance and clerk. We're kind of the glue that keeps the whole city going. And I was trying to find a graphic that would represent that, but I just nothing did it justice. Going back to this picture, the reason I'm doing that is the gentleman on the far right is Navi. He was actually hired to help with the Safe City program. And Brian Wynn on the far left is, he took it upon himself to interview 16 people. He went out to the school district, to Highline, to Green River, to Bates, to Clover Park, all of them. We got 16 applicants. And of that, we interviewed, and there were some people with some really good skills that would actually be helpful. But we kept in mind, though, that this was an internship. And so we kind of took that to heart. And with Navi, he was a go-getter, a fast learner, a really good guy, and smart. Like one of the tests that Brian ran him through was, how do you actually crimp a cable? So when you plug your computer in with the phone cord looking thing, the Ethernet cord, putting that end on it is a process. And he actually ran him, every 16 candidates got that test. And Navi was good, but he didn't know exactly how to do it. But he went home, he practiced it, and he got it all taken care of. So that was the purpose. We hired him, is because we wanted to share. We wanted to actually bring that up. But the problem with that approach is, because we're so short-staffed, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to do that. And I'm happy. I love to see people exceed and move on. And as a manager, I really enjoy my staff actually gaining their skills and moving on to a bigger, better, more challenging aspect. But, it takes a lot of time and energy. And same thing with Brian, moving to Auburn. That was a challenge because he took over a lot of what I am responsible for in our organization. The networking and the systems, all the stuff that if we were to shut all that stuff off, nothing happens. A computer doesn't transmit to a server. You can't get to the internet. Email doesn't flow. And I put a lot of time and effort into it. And so to lose that, it hurts. So to bring on an intern is helpful, but we just need to be staffed accordingly before that actually becomes a viable or feasible approach. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Kopang, and then Councilmember Tran.
Yeah, Thomas, I also want to thank you for your assistance last week. The remote is much better than it was, certainly. I also just wanted to make a general comment that I really do look at IT as, and the lack of IT as a public safety issue, and really do appreciate the dedication that your team has demonstrated. I know, Stan, what you said, 3 in the morning?
Well, that was one time, but we have been known
but-
to pull 23-hour days
Yeah,
too.
and I've been in late at times, and you've been here. I know, I think that the entire team has demonstrated a high level of dedication, and really, I mean, there's a team focus there that I really admire, that's been created by you and by each of the team members and working together. So I think for me, I definitely want to see us make staffing IT a high priority. And just thank you again. So,
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thomas, thank you. You were one of the first one that I met shortly after I sworn in, and I remember I visited your small team. And if you remember, I shared with you that in my day job, IT staff used to report to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand some of the work that you do, and I understand the challenges that your team are facing. The work that you guys do is very important. I mean, I was telling some of my peers here that, if the IT department go down, the rest of the city go down. I mean, that's sum it up. So I agree with Councilmember Copan and Deputy Mayor that we would need to do something to help you out. I mean, this is a priority. I know that we still, we still have a long way until we vote on the budget. But I can tell you that my commitment is that we will try to do everything to help your department out, because it is so critical that you have, at least enough people to keep things going. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Duclos.
Thank you, Thomas, for your presentation. I really appreciate it very much. But what it does is highlight that we can't be cutting all the time. We need to look at revenue, new sources of revenue for this city, and that's what I'm hoping to do with the Revenue Enhancement Committee. But we all, as a council, should be getting behind bringing more business into this city, working with the chamber closely to do that, and any other way we can to entice businesses to come to this community. We can do all, we can say we need all of this stuff, but if we can't pay for it, and if we can't pay competitive salaries, what we're going to do is train people to work someplace else. So we really need to start looking at what we can do to help Tim with his department. All by himself, it's pretty hard. What we as a council can do to try and attract businesses to this community.
And I do want to reiterate that we're going to be doing a salary survey this coming year. We're going to have at least $2 million more starting in 2020. And so I think it is important, and I do think that there's a lot of anger out in the region and locally about increased taxes. And that's why the 2019 portion of the budget does not call for an increase in taxes. That's why we're leaving score. And so I think it is important to note that the second half of the biennium, we're going to have $2 million more. And so what we did not want to do is add on an ad hoc basis certain positions until we figure out exactly where they're needed throughout the city with a workload study and figure out how much we've got after we adjust salaries as well. So the first thing is get the salaries up. But I just want to reiterate that this is a 2-year budget. The second half is where we're going to have more money. And
I want to say, I'm not talking taxes. I'm talking about new revenue, not tax revenue.
Okay. Well, we are looking at, if you heard, when you heard the community development presentation, they did adjust fees. Brian, how much more money are we anticipating from the adjustment of fees for services in community development?
Just under 100,000.
Okay. And then, John, did you, in the John Hutton and Parks, did you have an increase in regard to fees in your budget?
We did, but we used those as part of our $200,000 cuts.
Okay, and then in EJ, how much of your budget were you able to secure with additional fees and assessments?
About 130,000, and similar to John, it's an offset.
Okay, so, all right, I just want to make sure that's clear. So we did not have to, the proposed budget does not dip into our strategic reserves, which is, if we dip below $9 million in regard to our general fund reserves, it will affect our credit rating. So it was critical that we got back up to that level and also secured at least $312,000 for a 2% COLA at a minimum. Councilmember Kopeng? Or I thought I saw your... Okay. Okay. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thomas, I echo the words of my colleagues. You do amazing work. I'm not going to go into too much because I'm appreciative, so thank you. For a couple, we've known each other for about 5 years now, I think. And you know that I've been an advocate for a financial dashboard system. Would that go into, I understand that's not being funded in the proposed budget, but is that something that would go into your department, to the services, on page C17 of the budget?
Yeah, and that's actually
Is that where that
representative
would
of
go?
this as well.
Yeah, there it is.
So typically, when we do services and charges, yes, that's where that type of expenditure would go for ongoing support. For capital one time, it would be in the, obviously, capital outlay section. But I have been working with ADA on a couple of items for trying to fund that, that dashboard mechanism. But yeah, it's something that we're looking for, and that's effectively where it would be. So capital is one-time funding, and then the services and charges the ongoing.
I'm sorry, can you elaborate on what you meant when you said that you were working with ADA on that?
Yeah, so we're working with ADA. As part of the 2018 amendment, we looked at putting money from that restricted 107 fund into this because it have to do with public access. And so we did budget a portion of money for a situation of this, but the problem is that unfortunately is one-time money. Okay, so like I said originally, 107 is the Comcast restricted funds, and that it can only be spent on capital one time. Okay, so it can be for ongoing revenue. So if we do use that money to buy the software, we have to support it. We have to keep it maintenance and ongoing. And that program that we looked at originally, the name escapes me for right now, but their prices went from about $18,000 to $20,000. The next time Ade and I met with him, it was pushing $100,000 for the same product. So that's one product. There are several ways to actually share data and get that out there. So it's not just that particular product, but there are other ways.
Well, and that's why I was advocating for this several years ago, because the price was considerably different, much more cheaper, and
Well, unfortunately, Councilmember Moore, you have to look at it, though, we'd still be caught. Because while the cost to entry would be lower, the ongoing cost ramps up. So all those same customers, that's what we're facing with when I said the unbudgeted increases for contracts. That's what we're faced with on those as well. We buy the service, just like Adobe, for example, with Creative Cloud. You know, we are on the hook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Microsoft wants everything to go to the cloud. They get you that because they can count on your revenue every single year. So, yes, the cost to entry would be lower, but the problem is the ongoing maintenance would still be what we'd be faced with today.
Just like all the other programs within the City Hall as well,
Mm-hmm.
like Beam and others.
Yep.
Correct? Yeah. So, but what I heard you say is that you and Ade are currently working in that, or you had been working that towards for now and the future, or?
Yeah, for the one-time purchase, we're trying to look at using that money, but the ongoing is the challenge. So that's why we haven't been able to move forward at this point.
Got it. And then it's not in the proposed budget at this time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, council, any other questions for Thomas? Great job, Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope I covered it all.
I think you did. Okay. And help is on the way. I mean, I think it is important to note that we anticipate filling at least 1 to 2 of these positions in 2020 during this biennium. But I also think it's important to make sure that we get our employees paid up to an appropriate level, figure out how much we have. We need to be very deliberate and very careful and strategic about how we address, because this $2 million we're going to get from SCORE that we freed up will go quickly, and we want to be very careful with it. So, all right, thank you.
I'll hold you to the help is on the way.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you. All right, now, speaking of help being on the way, we've got our emergency manager, Ray Gross. I don't have any dramatic music to lead into your presentation, but
yeah,
exactly. Thank you. All right, Ray.
So, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. My name is Ray Gross. I'm the emergency manager for the city, and I will be presenting to you the 2019-2020 proposed budget for emergency management. I know we're close to a time limit, so I'll be very brief. Let's see here. So in emergency management, we fall under the mayor's office, and I report directly to the mayor. Actually, my entire staff reports directly to the mayor. We have a mission to prepare the city of Federal Way and what we call the greater Federal Way community for emergencies, disasters, and catastrophes. Doing that consists of planning, training, and exercises. So we plan to respond to, recover from disasters, and we do that via these 5 phases that are called mitigation, prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. Current staffing is 1 FTE. Just want to highlight a couple of the missions that I take up the bulk of my time. In emergency management, relationships are essential. Back when Kerry Rowe was here, he created what we call the Greater Federal Way concept. Since we're not a full-service city, we have South King Fire, Lake Haven Water Sewer District, Federal Way Public Schools, and St. Francis. Those agencies all service our residents as well as unincorporated areas. And Kerry Rowe brought them all in, and we created the Greater Federal Way community. Those relationships are essential, and we meet with them on a monthly basis in what we call the Greater Federal Way Oversight Committee. So decision makers from those agencies get together once a month. We kind of lay out whatever the current topics are, how we're going to approach them, and how best to efficiently use the resources that we have to address whatever concerns we have. Another area that I put a lot of effort into is our community outreach. If you notice, a lot of the hurricanes, say in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of the response depends on what the business community, as well as just the individual, what their preparedness level is. So that's where I spend a lot of time. I do that through what's called the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT. That's a big part of our both training our individuals just in life-saving essential skills, as well as introducing them to how they can volunteer in the event that we have a major disaster. We also have a program called NET, Neighborhood Emergency Teams. You know, I want to say here recently, the knowing your neighbor seems to happen after an event. So what NET tries to do is help bring neighborhoods together so they can identify, are there special needs in the area, develop relationships between those neighbors so they can help one another in the event that there's a disaster. And then on a request basis, I'll do various preparedness presentations to businesses, community organizations, Boy Scouts, whoever asks. I typically run it through the mayor. He's very supportive of the program, and that takes up a lot of evening and weekend time. Then lastly, down there where it says lead city recovery efforts, since my time here in April of 2006, we've had 5 federally declared disasters here. Majority of them are weather related. Of those 5 disasters, through our FEMA reimbursement recovery effort, emergency management recovered for the city about $700,000. So my budget is pretty stable. The 2 increases, the step increase, COLA, and healthcare, those are the only 2 real increases. The rest of the budget is pretty stable. Those agencies I mentioned in the Greater Federal Way community, each of them contributes $7,000 to the program at large, as well as I typically get a grant. It's called the Emergency Management Performance Grant from FEMA. It's administered, passed through via Washington State, and that helps fund our mass notification system. Some of the big accomplishments from 2017 to 2018, as Thomas mentioned, the Integrated Emergency Management course back in Emmitsburg. We went back at the end of August, beginning of September of last year. That was our 2nd time. That in itself is an accomplishment. Most cities only go once. We were able to go twice. The first time was in 2009. I want to say both events were very informative, very worth our time, both in team building, relationship building, as well as identifying some key areas that we need to address. One of those being IT. Let's say we had a significant event that would interrupt IT. Yeah, we're kind of back in the 18th century as far as capability-wise, communication-wise, just financially. So Emmitsburg was a very valuable. It tests our plans. It builds confidence in our relationships. And as long as we come back and act on the lessons that we observed, they become lessons learned. Some other things, there's a program called the Storm Ready. We've been engaged in that in 4 3-year terms. So we have our 4th accreditation from the National Weather Service on that. That's working heavily with Public Works, and that's one of the biggest accomplishments that I hear from other agencies is that it may have people that live in Federal Way as they hear, if we can just get the Federal Way, because of Public Works efforts on keeping the roads open and available during our snow and ice events, that's something I commonly hear in various meetings. Emergency planning for the U.S. Special Olympics last year, heavily engaged with parks and public police and South King Fire on that. It was an interesting learning experience from my part. I'm not normally engaged in large event planning like that, so there's some value to that. In the last 2 years, we've trained about 140 residents in CERT, and we've done 2 evacuation drills with our assisted living facilities here in Federal Way. Some of the projects for next year, there's a tri-county effort right now to focus on what the federal government is calling the combined complex terrorist attacks. So Snohomish, King, and Pierce County are heavily engaged in that. And right now, we're in the planning and exercise design phase of it. Kind of following in that mantra is, under the direction of the mayor, is for us to shore up our response plans and protocols for active shooter. And some of the events I kind of call active killer because it's not necessarily a shooter. It could be a car or just stabbing or explosions. So internally, the city has been working on plans and protocols for that, but we've been heavily engaged with working with the school district. So my office, police, and South King Fire. I've brought in a couple of people from Public Works when traffic needed to be mentioned or worked on. But that's a growing partnership on that topic, and I want to say we're doing some good work in that area. I always said this area, hope is not a method, just hoping it doesn't happen here. And we've far exceeded that. I mean, we're doing some good stuff. Now we just need to exercise and train to it. And then lastly, the thing that takes up a bulk of my time is all the stuff that I'm currently working on eventually needs to go into what we call our CEMP, our Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. And that's kind of the guiding document that if the Emergency Operations Center ever stands up, that would guide that response and recovery. Some of the challenges, other than what had already been maybe mentioned about IT, preventative maintenance, that sort of thing. For emergency management itself, for a city of Federal Way's population size, ideal staffing is typically 3. In the past, I've had a part-time temporary help, but as one of the council members mentioned, they get trained up and someone steals them. Okay? So if emergency management had 3 people, it would go from what I call right now is kind of a reactive posture. As things come up or get mandated, we react to them, and I do the best I can, bringing in relationship resources to fill in areas that I can't address. Before I go into kind of what that would look like if we had 3 people, I want to just say that presently, the City of Federal Way meets county, state, and federal mandates as far as emergency management. Okay, so we are, everything that's required or mandated by law at either one of those layers, we're currently meeting. If we had 3 people, there'd be a manager that would deal with planning, policy, local and regional engagements. The next position would focus on training and exercise. That would be both internal and then internal training and then exercising staff and plans. And lastly would be community outreach position, which would engage business, faith-based, social clubs, neighborhoods, and all bringing them in so they have a better understanding of what government's going to do, address some of their expectations, and then how they could help. Then the other two items, it's just a dream of emergency manager to always have a dedicated emergency operations center. It just makes training easier, so we don't have what's called an EOC in a box, where all the equipment is up on shelves. The only time it gets used is either in training or when you really need it. So there's just some readiness concern there. And then lastly, just having a dedicated emergency management vehicle that would provide support out to the field, majority doing communications, but as well as helping in the logistical area. Emergency management isn't out there to direct field response, we're just there to help. So with that, that concludes my presentation on the emergency management budget.
Councilmember Duclos?
I don't have any question, Ray. I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. I remember years ago when I was on the council, not only did we have an emergency management staff, but all the council members too got trained in things. And we had actually practice exercises. And that was quite a learning experience, you know, not just learning what to do for City Hall, but what to do for the community, what to do for your own homes.
Right.
And it was quite an educational thing. And I would love to see us try to do that again sometime when we have the staff to do it. So thank you, everything for you doing.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sefa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. You talked about getting $700,000 back for the city through FEMA. Is that like for city infrastructure, or did it go towards residents of the city?
The $700,000, I'll try not to get technical either. FEMA will reimburse eligible expenses 75%. Washington State normally picks up 12.5% of that remaining 25%. So those eligible expenses are typically staff overtime, city vehicles, as well as any other equipment that was used to respond to whatever the problem is. So it comes directly back to the city itself.
So if a resident needs reimbursement, they go directly to FEMA,
Well,
right?
it gets very complicated.
Okay.
The president has to authorize what they call individual assistance. It's very rare that that gets opened up. And then if that were to be part of the reimbursement process, that individual assistance, the FEMA will typically open up a disaster assistance center. The residents would then work directly with FEMA to recover any eligible loss on their end.
Okay. And then with the vehicle, sometimes King County has surplus vans and cars. Is that something we would qualify for, or how does that work?
It's a good suggestion. Our King County Council person, Pete Von Reichbauer, is also very good about getting vehicles. Actually, was very good with the multi-service center and with the Boys and Girls Club and also down in the valley, formerly.
Auburn Youth Resources, not Nexus.
Right. Yeah. But even yeah, that's right. So let's reach out. Actually, that's where the assistance from Mr. Vidino is going to be very important. Bill, let's remember to talk about perhaps coordination with Pete's office regarding looking into surplus vehicles for that purpose. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. Ray, thanks for all your work that you do. I know that I've been certified, and I don't know if my colleagues are certified. Are you guys certified? Ooh, we got one. Oh, two.
From CTAC.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Wow. Okay, that's a surprise. I used to think that we should
Now we know who's certifiable.
certifiable. Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum.
So, oh, well, look at that. Maybe we just need a
Thank you.
crash
He'll be here
course.
all week.
Maybe we should do a crash course update for elected officials, because I do think there's value in I'm sure along with the mayor, that our elected officials play a pivotal role when something horrendous does happen.
Absolutely.
And I know that I've walked past here many times, and you've had your class in session, and I've spoken at a few of them, but it's just a valuable resource that you offer, and we hope not to experience such thing. But if Mount Rainier erupts, obviously we're going to be affected by it. I don't know how much, but if we have a catastrophe in terms of earthquake, there's obviously a lot of concern. So I do think that that's something that we need to kind of keep plugging away at and doing what we can to support you, so that when something catastrophic happens, we're there and you have all the tools that you need. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Ray. Appreciate
you.
all the work you've done. I actually did also add Ray to the management team. So at every management team on Monday, Ray is present. We get an update, and Ray and I meet regularly to talk about these issues. So thank you, Ray, for all
Thank
your
you.
work. Okay, now moving on to public comment. We've got two pink sheets that have been completed. Judy James and then Mr. Lamont Stiles. So Judy first, please. Oh, I've got two more.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Honda, and members of the council. Councilmember Duclos mentioned that the city needs revenues that are sustainable. And I know that you have some one-time savings in the budget that will cover some things for maybe 2020. But I want to talk to you about a sustainable revenue stream that will allow the city to plan for some expenditures dependably in the future, and so that you don't have to burden your citizens with additional taxes and fees. I have some information that is taken from the latest Washington Youth Health Survey. The survey is a statewide collaborative effort between the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Department of Health, Department of Social and Health Services, Division of Behavioral and Health and Recovery, the Family Policy Council, the Department of Commerce, and the Liquor and Cannabis Board. There have been claims that the presence of legal marijuana stores in the city will actually increase teen access to marijuana, but the data from the study, and the study goes back several years, show that no significant trends are seen over time in the measure of how many teenagers think it would be sort of easy or fairly easy to access marijuana. I've heard claims that the presence of these stores in Ferrell Way will send the wrong message to our kids, that drugs are the new norm. And the basis of this complaint is apparently that by removing the criminal stigma from adult marijuana use, that it makes it sound like it's now an okay thing for everybody. But the data shows that the presence of legal marijuana stores has not convinced young teens that marijuana use is okay. Again, in the words of the report, no significant trends were seen for the teens in grades 8 and 12, while there was a slight decline in the rates of 10th graders who had tried marijuana at a younger age. And lastly, that they're concerned that availability of legal marijuana will increase marijuana use among our youth. It hasn't. About a quarter of high school seniors are currently using marijuana monthly, but that figure was reached in 2010, and it stayed there. It hasn't changed over the last 6 years. Since 2010, use among 6th, 8th, and 10th graders has actually gone down, and the previous rise among 12th graders has leveled off. When people ask why you voted to allow marijuana stores in Federal Way, assuming you do, might I suggest that you tell them this. In the past, there was no data to rely on, so I acted out of an abundance of caution. Now that several years of data is available, I've let go of a lot of the concerns that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Lamont Stiles. Then Clifford Garrett, and then Lynn Idahosa.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Happy to be here. All praise the Most High for letting me be here. I just wanted to address the budget issue. I've sat in on a lot of these meetings, and what I've gotten overwhelmingly is that we have certain portions of the government that are being funded very well, and we have other portions of the government being poorly funded. And according to the people that have came up here and presented, they basically said the two major ones was the technical infrastructure, the IT, and then like as far as the courts and the staffing and things of that nature, we're very, very underserved. So why? When the legal team gave their presentation, oh, we don't need nothing, we're good. You know what I'm saying? But yet and still, we're saying that the most important, this guy got up here and said, if this didn't work, the city was shut down. And we're saying, we're going to try to help you. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is, whatever is over here that we allotted, we're putting it here first, because we just said, without this wouldn't happen. None of this would happen. What we would like is, for our city representatives to stand up and say what we're for or what we're against. You said you were going to do zero-based budgeting. I'm like, oh, I'm happy. So we saved some money. Come to find out, we didn't even do that. We do some other stuff. So what is zero-based budgeting? Why aren't we doing it? And where are the recommendations aren't being followed? I have no confidence. And I'm just going to keep it real. I have no confidence that you're going to have a committee or a study, and then recommendations come out, and then you follow the recommendations. I haven't seen it yet. So if it looks like we're building this really, really nice car. It's pretty. It has nice paint. It has nice rims, but we don't have an engine. They're saying that we need revenue. We do need revenue, but what are we doing with the revenue that we have? If solid questions aren't being asked, then it's, oh yeah, we need this. Okay, sure, bam, you can have that. But then somebody gets up here and it's the crux of what we need, and oh yeah, we're gonna help you. That's not acceptable. We have elections coming up next year, and we want to hold people accountable. It is not about getting along. I want to see people saying, that does not make sense. Why? We fixed the score situation. Well, you fixed the problem that you got into it ourselves. We're the one that created it. And then you get out of it and say, oh, we got out of it. No, you created it. So we want accountability, man, period.
All right, Clifford Garrett, and then Lynn Idahosa.
Hello, my name is Clifford Garrett. As you might expect, I'm here to make a case for retail marijuana in Federal Way. By simply lifting Federal Way's ban on marijuana stores, the city will open the door to $872,000 in additional tax revenue. How is this figure calculated? It is based on a conservative estimate of $20 million in total retail sales. The first $670,000 comes from sales tax. $170,000 of that is unrestricted, meaning it can be spent on whatever you want. $180,000 would be allocated to local transit. $280,000 would be allocated to regional transit. $20,000 would be allocated to criminal justice, and another $20,000 would go to mental health. Further, $202,000 would come from the marijuana excise tax due to the city. This $202,000 is also unrestricted. For those of you who are keeping track, both the sales tax and excise tax components amount to $370,000 in total unrestricted funds remitted directly to the city of Federal Way. In other words, $370,000 for simply allowing marijuana businesses to operate just like your neighbors, Auburn, Des Moines, Fife, and Tacoma. It's the easiest money the city will ever make. Lastly, I will point out that Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, Nisqually all have recreational retail stores. These are all cleanly cities with thriving businesses and low unemployment. I spend a lot of time in all of these cities and can assure you that they are very nice places to work and live. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to say, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next Federal Act committee has the discussion about retail marijuana stores in the city of Federal Way. And that's the fourth Tuesday of the month, if you'd like to come, at 4:30.
All right, Lynn Idahosa.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I assumed I had missed public comment since I was a little late for this meeting, so that was intended for the next meeting.
Oh, great. I'll put that aside. You get to go first at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have on the agenda both council consideration and an executive session. The executive session we'll need to do at the conclusion of the regular city meeting, regular scheduled city council meeting. Do we have any council deliberations or comments regarding the budget? I'm hearing not right now.
Not right now.
Okay, for those folks here and watching on TV, we had presentations regarding city council budget, mayor's office budget, the information technology or IT, and emergency management. And so this is the end of a 2-hour hearing. We've got about 4 minutes before the regular city council meeting. It is my desire and intention to start at 7. So let's get back out here in just a few minutes. We'll be in recess for about the next 4 minutes before the regular city council meeting starts.